Phoebe, thanks for coming on Analog Dialogue. How's it going?
It's going good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Um, so I always start every episode the same way. I ask everyone, if someone's watching who's never heard of what you do, could you describe that, describe your presence in the arts industry?
The infamous question, like, what do you do? What's your music like? Yeah. Um, yeah, totally. So I am a singer-songwriter, calls everything in between kind of thing. Piano's the main thing. The music is lots of doo-wop harmony, funk and soul influences, but mainly it's I put it in the indie pop bracket. But
Yeah.
lots of influences, and yeah, that's I could keep going, but you won't want me to.
Yeah, I mean, like I find like your lyric writing to be like incredibly honest. Um, and like is that like a like writing lyrics, is that like a place of comfort for you?
Yeah, I think the I definitely see songwriting as a kind of a thought of a form of therapy, and being able to just get stuff off your chest, and whether you then play it to other people is a kind of messed up therapy though. It's like, here are all my feelings and I want to share them with the world. It's like, who goes into a therapy session and comes out and says, that was cool, I'm going to tell everyone about that in
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah.
so that's the weird thing about singer-songwriters. I think we go that step further, which is just kind of strange, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your songwriting process like?
It entirely depends on the song, really. It kind of changes. Sometimes, 70% of the time the music will come first, so either the chords or the melody,
Hmm.
and then the lyrics and the melody will kind of come together. But first and foremost, there's a sentiment or something that I want to talk about or feel or think about. um yeah, so
Yeah. Does that like sort of like the mood of the melody or harmony ever like impact the like the words that come out?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it kind of all depends on how I'm feeling at the time. Which you can choose. Like I am consciously trying to like choose to write about something specific, and that's always different. Like the song that we did is an example of being given an opportunity to write something that isn't from you per se, but it's
Hmm.
a combination of people, or a combination of like of writers or players or situations, or there's a message that needs to be said, and it's you kind of step out of the space of what do I want to say, and you step into the space of what does this song want to say, which is a really fun place to be, because it's like then there's less of an ego thing in there, because it's
Yeah.
like it's not about me, it's about the song, which is always a really fun a fun side of songwriting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that like is that collaboration like fulfilling for you, or like is it like do you sort of lean more towards writing stuff for yourself?
It definitely is fulfilling. It kind of scratches a different itch.
Mm.
Makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
I I've just put out a new album, and it's been like an album a year for the last 3 years. So there's been quite a high turnaround for songs, and within that for emotions. So it's been like kind of a roller coaster of the last 3 years, and I'm genuinely pooped at this point. I'm genuinely just tired, in a good tired like when you run a marathon or something and you feel like I've a lot of work and a lot of passion has just gone into these last 3 albums, and I need to rest. And that is kind of that's when I look at picking up different collaborations and stuff, because it's a
Mm.
different mindset, it's a different attitude to the writing, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that new record, the one that you just put out, Sweet Reunion. I mean, it's got like those like the classic sort of lush harmonies all over it. But even some like super playful ones, right? Like in like Never Be a Cool Girl has like the super like playful harmonies, right? Sounds kind of like in like Imogen Heap samba sort of sort of thing, right? But can we break down some of the tunes for a minute, talk about some of that stuff? So what, like, if you had to pick like your favorite three, what would those be?
Oh, that's so hard. It's like picking your favorite three children. You shouldn't do that, but you kind of know. um, I do love Never Be a Cool Girl, but for me, that was I do love Never Be a Cool. I'm kind of more on the side of my underdog songs, because I'm sort of more like there's the ones that don't necessarily do as well as the, like, Never Be a Cool Girl got playlisted and got radio play, and that was amazing, and that was really, really fun to see, but it wasn't necessarily the most meaningful message of the album. Some of the, like, Songbird is definitely one of my three, because it's one that I didn't put out as a single, because I honestly just didn't think it would do as well as a single as the others did, but for me it's the most poignant and the one I had the most fun on with the lyrics. I kind of, that was when I decided to write differently. I told a story through characters instead of putting I or you in it. I made it about a kind of third party situation, which was really fun, and I hadn't really explored that before. So Songbird for sure. I Am, purely because of the message, because that's my badass girl, that's my boss bitch song. Sorry, that's my boss bitch song, and that feels amazing because, and the way I wrote it as well, I wrote it with my best friend in Berlin last summer in August, and it was such a it was just such a bonfire of both of our lives and both of our experiences in the music industry, and we both just had this urge to just kind of just be like, oh my, just drop all of these social pressures that we put on ourselves, and all of these industry pressures, and all of these, like, things, targets we have to hit, and things that we have to keep hidden, and whatever, and all of these, you know, it was just it was just that sentiment, and that was a really fun writing process, and I loved the beat of it, and the vocals as well. I loved layering up all of those vocals. That was really fun. So I Am, Songbird, and oh my god, it's really hard.
Can I just say it Takes Two is probably my favorite.
The ballads will always have a very, very deep place in my heart, because for me, I love listening to sad music. Like, I'm not a sad person, but 9 times out of 10, if you asked me to put a record on right now, it would probably be quite an emotive, sad record. Like, I don't know what it is about Phoebe Bridgers' music, but I listen to it over and over again, and it doesn't get boring, and it's sad, but it's not. It's like, I'm happy in the sadness. It's such a weird thing with music, but I've been like that for ages, and that comes out in the ballads. And so that's kind of where I put, that's just the more emotion, the more cathartic the song, the more precious it is to me, I think. The more I get out in a song, which is It Takes Two, Something, Hope We're Happier. But I'm probably gonna have to just do another underdog and do wow, I've even forgotten the name of it. The middle interlude. Oh my god.
This Above All.
Okay. Bad mum. Very bad mum points there. This Above All was by far my favorite interlude that I've made so far. And the people that added stuff to it, I thought it was finished, and then I sent it to Steve Gould, and he played that insane drum part, sent it to Brody Fry, and he put on crap ton of amazing synth lines and the bass stuff that you hear to, like, out of the climax part, and it doesn't have any words, and I'm gravitating towards piano music right now in my writing. Like, I kind of have run out of words. I just don't feel moved to say anything, but I will put it in an instrumental piece, if that makes sense. So yeah, probably This Above All as well. I feel bad about all the others. No, I'm gonna leave it there.
I mean, like, and it's like it's placed at the perfect time on the record too, right? It's sort of this like palate cleanser right at the midway point, because you've got all these sort of like more sort of like high energy pop tunes at the top of the record, and then the back half of the record is very much like is more reflective, and that's where the ballads are. Is that how how did you go about, I guess, sort of selecting the order of the of those songs on the record?
Yeah, that's always a trickier part of the process, I think, because all three of the last records have done that. They've gone pop, upbeat, some kind of palette cleanser, ballads, end on a pop or end on a more upbeat song. And I think just naturally now, that's the way I like my albums to lay out, because I like the idea of people listening through to the whole thing. So narratively, I want it to make some sense going through. You're listening to a story. Yeah. So I think that was probably the main reason for the way the album is laid out this time around, just because it felt like the narratives of each song sort of led into the other.
Yeah. Just to go back to, I mean, I have to talk more about It Takes Two, because it's just so good. Like that, it feels like it was meant to follow like the Time to Wake too. Like, were they meant to go into each other at one point? Because like there's Time to Wake at the top of the record, right? But like if we're talking about sort of instrumental, if we keep saying palette cleansers, then like that could have gone in the middle too, right? It just feels like I don't know if they're in the same key, or it feels like it could transition into that. Was that ever a thing?
You know what? I think they used to be in the same key. Sorry, there's really loud. I don't know whether you can hear any of this. I set my audio to like turn off New York, but you can't. I don't know whether they used to be in the same key. I mean, the top of It Takes Two, so that strings part has definitely kind of plays its own sort of palette cleansery role as well. I think the suspended chord at the end of Time to Wake, I changed the key of it originally so it would flow better into I Am.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it was in a different key before, and it ends on the 4 of I Am, I believe, and then goes to B, because so I did make a conscious decision to put Time to Wake at the top and run it into I Am once I figured out what the running order was going to be. But the top of It Takes Two, I think at one point that might have come off the back of it, Time to Wake. I'm not sure. Interesting.
Yeah, like and just like the choir nerd in me is just so happy at like in the first like It Takes Two to break a heart, in that heart, that T on the word heart. It's so nice. It's very nice.
My T's appreciate the comment.
So good. But I mean, like Songbird is very much like this sort of warm folk melody sort of thing. Like I honestly, like, I had to do some research to make sure that it wasn't like a cover of like a folk song, because it feels so much just the storytelling and the way that the melody moves is just so poetic, and it's just fantastic.
Thank you.
So congrats on that one. But the whole record, like if you're watching this and you haven't listened to the record, you have to check it out. Set aside some time, listen to the full thing, because it really is, it's an experience to listen to the whole thing. So so is there ever like a different style of music that you'd want to explore?
Yes, too many. It does put me in a position of like, well, what, I need to focus on one. And I think Sweet Reunion, that album, sort of delved a little into more production stuff that I wanted to explore. So I produced a lot of that album myself, which I hadn't done the last 2 albums, and found that really fun and liberating to just be like, this is how I want, like Never Be a Cool Girl, for example, aside from a bunch more, and I Am, Never Be a Cool Girl and I Am, the ones that are really vocally led. That was me putting Imogen Heap on repeat and just hearing how she did her a cappella arrangements, and always having a love for a cappella groups and the different rhythms that you can sing and the different textures you can build just as a vocalist instead of the instruments. And that was definitely a step into that direction. But in terms of genres, yeah, I think, I mean, there's a musical inside me somewhere at some point. There has been for a long time.
Yeah.
That's brewing. It's not quite made itself apparent yet in terms of what it wants to be, but that's definitely at the core of everything I do is musical theater.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? Oh, 80s power ballads.
Nice.
I don't know whether you saw, I did a Bandcamp song that was like ripping into Bandcamp. Bandcamp are the good guys, let me premise this. Bandcamp are the good guys, but they still take quite a large percentage from you, and they give you 1 day a month where they don't take that percentage. And I'm like, 1 day a month? Anyway, I wrote this song and I put it up as my I'm putting out a new album post, and it was like, you like this. It was a bit of a weird post. Looking back, I probably should have been more like, this is my album coming out post, and this is a random song that I wrote. Whatever, mistake in the content world, we all make them. Anyway, it's like an 80s power ballad theme anthem, and I just love 80s power ballads. So I think there's definitely a bunch of songs that want to take that space as well. And a bunch of artists are doing that. I don't know whether you've heard the new Laura Mvula album.
No, I haven't listened to it yet.
It's amazing, and it's very 80s based, and it's very inspiring. So that's
very
fun.
Cool.
So 80s musical theater.
Yeah, I'm glad you said musical theater, because like this, like your stuff feels very musical theater, very like you can hear that influence, you know, like just like it feels a lot like do you know Waitress, like the Sarah Bareilles? Yeah, like I get a lot of like sort of Waitress vibes from the record too, right? Where it's this sort of like there is a story going on. It's almost like whether it's like a musical, or if it's like a concept album, whatever you want to call it, there's still like there's a, you know, a story that's sort of being thread throughout, right?
Yeah.
But well, maybe we'll get a musical out of you one day.
It's coming. I feel like every end of a project, it's like, is it my turn yet? No. Actually, I check in with that idea. I'm like, is it your turn yet? And it's like, no, I haven't finished growing. I haven't figured myself out. So I'm like, all right, the diva that it is. There you
go. So, you know, like what's if you had to decide, you know, what your sort of thing was, you know, thing that sort of sets you apart from other musicians, what would be that thing?
I think, or at least I've been told, that it's my backing vocals and how I arrange my harmonies, and which I love because I've always been really into that. So that's really fun to see people going, oh, she's doing something different with that. That's like, oh, that's cool to hear. Yeah, I think, but yeah, probably the backing vocals. Yeah, and the way I write them, I think.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Like that's sort of, it's very iconic what you do. Like you hear the background vocals, and like you immediately know that it's you. Like there's that sort of sound. It just, I don't know. It's hard to describe. Like it's, like they're always very like super tight. Like how do you, I know it's part of like any person's vocal range. That's naturally not going to be like super far apart, right? But like the harmonies that you're writing seem to be like pretty close. Is that like, is that something that you think about? Like, do you like, write it out in music software or something, or is it all just sort of by ear, or how do you sort of come about that?
Yeah, it's all by ear. I don't write it out. And if I did write it out, it probably look very messy. It would just be like a bunch of notes literally semitones away from each other.
Yeah.
The way I do it is, if I have like 3 harmony families that I work with. And there's the lead vocal and then 3 family of harmonies. So you have your lyric doubles, which are harmonies that are around the lead that are singing the lyrics. So for example, if you have like usually little passages of the lead vocal that are just a third here, a fifth there, maybe a scrunch here, something like that. They're kind of not a full like all the way through, but little moments of lyric harmonies. Then I have my harmony bed, which is an oo or an ah or any other vowel that is just that kind of, it sounds like an instrument. It's kind of, I want it to be like a cloud of just vocals. I usually layer that up. Oh my God. I'm so loud. Okay. I don't know what's going on out there.
All good.
Seriously. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, that usually will go like first, third, fifth, fourths and seconds. I will just throw fourths and seconds in as much as I can because I love that tension and release and that sort of thing. And then the third one is like percussive vocals. So dums, and when you like Never Be a Cool Girl is percussive vocals, and little sections of vocals that are kind of more like dum 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 or something that's like stepped, have a bit more of a rhythmic role. That's how I think about it, at least.
Did you ever like again, just like, did you ever do any like choral singing or like choral like analysis or things like looking at choral scores, or like did that sort of influence what you do?
Yeah, I was in choirs and a cappella groups and orchestras and all that stuff growing up, and learned kind of classical grade piano, vocals, cello as well. I was a cello until I was early 20s and then stopped playing, which I regret deeply. I should play the cello again. But yeah, so I did learn about like Bach chorales, and that was always part of the syllabus. And I think there was probably just that rebellious part of me when you're being taught the thing that you really want to do. It's like there are 2 sides of your brain. There's the brain that's like, I need all of this information and I'm going to learn everything about it. And there was a bunch of the syllabus that I just like lapped up, and I was like, I need to know all about this and vocal technique and arranging like a cappella voices or playing and singing at the same time, all of this stuff. And then there'd be the stuff like Bach chorales where I'd be like, but I don't like all these rules. Like, what are these rules with, like, I just want to sing what sounds good and I don't want to write it all out. I just want to do it by ear. So I kind of rebelled a little bit, but I have some of those foundations in me. Yeah.
Like, I want to sing a fifth.
Oh my God. That was the most annoying one. Yeah. That was the most, it's like parallel fifths. I'm like, what is wrong with a parallel fifth? And then I do understand what is like sonically kind of awkward about them, but that's what makes them fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. There we go. But I did a lot of I actually ran the a cappella group at University of Leeds that I was at, northern UK, and yeah, that was really fun. And that was actually when I started running that group and teaching people a bunch of songs and arrangements. I then had to notate everything. So then I learned how to use Sibelius and notated it all, and then realized as I was notating what was in my brain, I was like, oh, that's not a very good alto line. That literally jumps like 15 times. That's not pretty. I need to learn how to write nice lines. So that came a bit later.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't realize that. So you have like a classical background then, if that's right. So I didn't realize that you have that classical background. I did the same thing. Like, I studied classical music, but I'm sort of trying to do more like singer-songwriter pop stuff. But was there anything while you were in school that sort of informed that decision to not do classical music, you know, like purely classical music, and do more the pop stuff?
Um, I don't think it was anything to do with school. Uh, I mean, I didn't go to college to learn pop or jazz. I didn't actually go to a performance college. I went to what's called a red brick, which is, I don't know what the equivalent of that is over here. It's basically a uni that has all subjects. It's not a music college. And I did music at this red brick. It was a BA in music, but I went specifically because I wanted to be able to take modules outside of the music class. So my music degree was philosophy of music, sociology of music, feminism of music, the thinking about music basically was my degree. And I did all my pop and songwriting outside of my degree because I knew that's what I wanted to do. So I sort of was like, with my degree, I was like, well, I'm going to do stuff that I might not be able to do when I start being a singer-songwriter, which is like being nerdy and being in the library and reading all of these philosophy books. Like I wasn't going to do that when I left uni. I just knew it because I knew I wanted to be a singer-songwriter. But through school, I always did the songwriting and stuff outside of school and never really studied it. I sort of learned it from artists that I loved and listening to a bunch of different music and kind of following my instincts, I guess, with that. But it was never a case of like, I don't want to do that at school, so I'm going to do this. It was like, well, there wasn't really a pop syllabus either. Like, I think I was at the tail end of don't teach kids about pop music, about classical music and Baroque music and Tchaikovsky. And, you know, that was what we were taught, which I loved. But at the same time, the pop syllabus was only just coming in and no one was really taking it seriously. So I think I had to get all of my pop education outside of school. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, it's, do you feel like that's had an impact at all on what you're on what you're doing? Like, do you wish you studied pop?
No, not really. No. I think there was a moment at university when I nearly left and went to a pop college and went to a college that was going to teach me about music production and songwriting and all of this stuff. And I had a couple interviews and I like looked around these places and figured out that the experience of these colleges wasn't the experience I wanted from university. It was basically just going to pit you together with all of these other musicians. And I won't shy away from competition, but I think the thing with singer-songwriter, the thing with any art is like your whole life is going to be spent competing for the attention of consumers. Like your whole life, you know that that's going to be part of the job. You're not just going to write something and everyone's going to want to listen to it. I mean, unless you're Amy Winehouse or Adele, but like about these very few people. And I just felt like university, I still wanted to be free to think what I wanted and try what I wanted and not be judged on the thing that I knew I was going to be judged on for the rest of my life, if that makes sense. It's like I kind of just didn't want that scrutiny at that point because it's also all just like you get, and I did put some songs into some of my early modules in the degree. I think a couple of the modules were on, what was it? It was a psychology and music class where you made a presentation on how you use music for your own benefit. And I spoke about my songwriting and I put in a song and I played a song and I told them about what I was getting out of it and, you know, all of this stuff. And at the end of the whole module, you know, they give you a mark and they give you criticism, and they gave me a mark and they gave me a bad mark and they gave me a lot of criticism. And I was like, it wasn't like I don't need criticism. It was like, that wasn't what I wanted to get out of that module. I wanted to know more about the psychology of what we were doing. I was less interested in them telling me whether they liked my song or not. And I mean, I'm from a family of constructive criticism. If my parents ever see this, they won't mind me saying. they are the most constructive critiques out there. You know, they all, you either have parents who are going to tell you when something's bullshit, or you're going to have parents that will love you no matter what. There's mostly over here, a lot of this, of course, but you know, this is, and so I've grown to know that constructive criticism is out there when you want it and when you need it. But during my degree, this is a long way away from what you asked me, I think, but I don't know how I've got here. I think, yeah, during my degree, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to be judged yet. I know I will be judged on what I do, but I want to keep learning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to just build on an experience. It definitely crossed my mind to go to one of those colleges, for sure. Yeah.
Where do you feel like you're at now? Are you still learning, or are you being judged?
Both, 100%. And I think that's just a given whenever you're a creative and it's what you do for your livelihood. So that's fine. That's part of the deal. You know, it's, I'm definitely still learning though. I still don't know how to fully produce myself. I still don't know how to fully make these videos that I'm making, which just look like I don't know what I'm doing, which is fine. That's its own charm, I guess. You know, there's always something to learn. But I'm doing it in the context of, now I have an idea of what people want to listen to and what people want to consume. Because you have to, when it's your business and your livelihood, you do have to take that into account. Less so than when you're at university, because it's not what you're doing to earn money. So now it is a case of like, okay, what was the response to that song? What are people saying about it? How much traffic did this video get compared to this video? What do people want to see? And that's always a given whenever you enter any kind of creative business world. That becomes reality. Yeah.
How much does that impact what you create?
It does impact a lot, I think, because you just have to keep covering your losses at some point. You know, if you put in X amount of money into a project, into any project, and it might be, it's like you kind of have to put your eggs in a bunch of different baskets. You're going to put your eggs in a really creative basket that might not come back and might not give you a win because it's so off center, or it's not something that people expect. Those are often sometimes the best things for you, and they really come through and they surprise you. And then there are the baskets that are like, well, this is an upbeat pop with this tempo, this arrangement, this message. Spotify's going to like it. It's probably going to playlist it. It's not necessarily my favorite song, but it's going to lift the stats, or it's going to get me that much exposure or whatever. It's like playing exposure gigs and then playing event gigs and being paid. You've got to kind of diversify what you're doing.
Yeah. So what about, you know, you've collaborated with a number of musicians, right? Like, which musicians have sort of like affected your path the most, would you say?
Well, obviously Corey's up there. When we met, I had done like, we met about 4 or 5 years ago now, and I had been working with a bunch of different producers, writing a whole bunch of different songs, getting them produced in a whole bunch of different ways. I had 3 EPs that hadn't been released. I was just like kind of scrambling. I was 4 years out of uni. So 4 years into the reality that was, you have to make a living out of this art now. Yeah, you're making a living out of yourself. And I just wasn't hitting anything. I wasn't making anything that when I was about to put it out, I was happy with. I was getting a lot of mixed feedback, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of like disconnected from the pianist vocalist, the very core of what I do. I was just like, it's old fashioned. It's not in trend. I need to be writing over beats. I need to be writing in the studio. Like, no one wants singer-songwriters at the moment. They want top liners and all of this stuff. So I kind of killed her off in a weird way. Anyway, I made this demo album of just piano vocal demos. And when I met Corey, I was like, hey, I'm a singer. If you ever need any vocals for anything, this is what I do. I sent him that album and he was like, this is really great. Like, are you producing it? And I explained, kind of, not really. I'm sort of trying this sort of project. And he was like, why? Like, people making what you do are in America and they're doing very well. You know, all those artists that you love, Emily King, Lake Street Dive, Wolf, Theo, you know, they're all doing what you're doing. And I'd just been looking at the wrong markets. I've been looking at the London market and being, because that's where I lived. And I was like, I need to be doing Tom Misch things and doing Neo and doing Sinead Harnett and doing all of these like Jungle and all of this stuff that was much more urban and much more beat driven. That just wasn't natural to me.
Right.
And so he was very prominent in that moment of like, look, just let me produce your songs and show you how they can be sounding. And he basically would just reminded me like, that's the music I wanted to make. I always knew that. I always knew I wanted to get in a studio with musicians and make this music. But I'd just gone off the path for a few years. But so that was a really nice moment of like, oh yeah, this is who I am. And he just kind of helped join the dots. And yeah, so definitely Corey. Yeah, he's great.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then just I mean, I've got a bunch of friends who are really talented at different levels of their career. And I mentioned my friend Sarah that I wrote I Am with, and she moved to Berlin to songwrite, and she has a whole story of her own, and she's an incredible singer-songwriter. Like her voice is, I mean, it's just insane. Like I don't say she should be exactly where she is, but her voice is, it will be chart topping, no doubt, at some point. And she's amazing, and she's my best friend, and we write a lot together, and it's always inspiring to work with her. And yeah, there are lots of people all along the way. People will bring you something that you might not have necessarily thought of before. Those are the most important people.
Yeah. Is there anyone you'd like to collaborate with?
Yes. Oh yes, big long list. I literally don't know who off the top of my head to just go with first. But I mean, I've always wanted to write or do something with people I've already said: Emily King, Lake Street Dive, Yeba, Haim. Friggin', I want to work with Billie Eilish and Ariana Grande and Dua Lipa and all of those top big pop girls. I want to write with them because there's something so poignant about being in that position and having the power to say anything and to get millions of people on board with your message. I just think that's such a powerful position to be in, and it would be really fun to see how they decide what to say, because they have such a platform and such a responsibility in that sense. It's like, yeah. But I've watched some interesting videos of them talking about their writing process, and it's just the same as any other writer. It's like, well, I was going through this breakup, or well, I had this friend that did this and I wanted to write about it. You know, they're writing about their day-to-day experiences just like we are, which is grounding. It's nice to hear.
Yeah. Not all that different. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think inspiration, yeah, it isn't that different. It's just whatever is around you that moves you at that time. Yeah.
So you recently moved from the UK to New York, right? What was it like making that move? Obviously you were saying, you know, you wanted to come to the States to sort of be in that scene. But you know, like you had that sort of that community where you were in the UK. What was it like making that transition?
It felt good. It felt natural. It felt like when I'd just been touring with Corey, so I'd met a bunch of people through his tours in America, and like Nashville was a hotspot, had a bunch of people that I really loved to work with in Nashville, and New York was the same. And so it felt like there would be people wherever I went, there would be people that could like help me in a sense, or be a kind of homebody scene that I had already sort of tapped into. So it didn't feel too much like I was jumping into the unknown. maybe slightly more with New York. I think I have more roots in Nashville, but New York came up as a better option to move in for now. And yeah, I maybe was a little bit more out of my depth in New York than Nashville, but it's New York. It's like London, just dirtier and crazy. Honestly, it's dirtier. Don't come at me, but London beats. I mean, I can't. I live in Flatbush, all right. I live in the depths of Brooklyn, so I can say that. Anyway, very nice parts of New York as well, obviously. But I've always loved New York, so I think it wasn't as daunting as maybe it could have been. But I think definitely a move in the pandemic was like, oh, because I've moved home with my parents, so I was very lucky to not be paying any kind of rent or outgoings every month, and then to have that put back on me again, and to be completely fresh in the market in terms of money earning gigs. That's been tough. That's still ongoing. I think there's still some insecurity there, but that's all part of the fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
She says, like, looking at her empty bank account, it's all fun, right? It's like, it's gonna be fine. Yeah.
And then what about like the sort of community that you're part of, or your surroundings? Like how do those things affect the music that you make?
I probably didn't realize how much it affected my music until I moved here, because I don't have the support network that I had back in the UK in terms of friends that I can call on or family that I can call on. I mean, I can still call them, but it's very different. So I guess there's that little like, oh, I need friends. I need a new support network. It's like, I haven't been in that position since I literally went to university, because you make friends at uni and then you inevitably move to London. So it was a funny feeling of like, oh, I have no friends. Like, I need friends. So that's been fun to kind of build new circles and get to know different scenes and different groups of people. But definitely surroundings. I've already mentioned where I live. I'm not going to hate on it anymore, but it's very noisy. And the tricky thing is that it's just recording. So I have to record with this mic, which is not my favorite vocal mic. I usually like condensers. And I have an Aston Origin with me, but the minute I plug it in, it's like it's so noisy. So the only frustrating things at this point, which are very first world problems, too loud, I can't record my vocals, and it's dirty. No, literally the only thing. But I think I just didn't realize how much I needed to be able to record vocals whilst I was writing, because all the vocals that I've done for my albums were the vocals on the demo, unless I recorded them live in the studio. So the way I write my demos is that the vocals and the harmonies are all ready for the record. And I just haven't been able to do that. So you're kind of going into the songwriting process knowing that you will have to re-record everything. So it kind of just puts that first hurdle of like, well, is this really going to be worth all the trouble? And then inevitably your brain goes, no, do another idea, or no, this idea sucks. And it's easier, or it's harder to beat that voice, because you're like, yeah, you're right, I'm going to have to re-record all these crappy harmonies. So getting over that is for sure part of the process. But it's still amazing to be in a new city at a time where you can now get out and see it and build a new scene, and new people, new circles.
Exciting times. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, well, cool. I mean, thanks for coming on and chatting with me today, Phoebe. Where can people find what you do?
Just anywhere on the internet. Phoebe Katis, Katis. I always spell it out phonetically, because some people have said some weird things. I'm like,
I bet. Yeah.
But Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube, Instagram. Anyway,
excellent. And I'll have links to all that stuff in the description of this video too, so people can check that out. But cool. definitely check out Sweet Reunion and the whole discography too. Get into it. So Phoebe, thanks again for coming on. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.